The alarm clock buzzed. John slammed it silent, a devious grin spreading across his face.
Honey, I'm off to work.
He called out, his voice thick with forced sleepiness. He heard a muffled
Love you, be safe.
from under the duvet. John chuckled. Safe? Oh, he was going to be anything but safe today. John wasn't going to work. He was going to see his wife's best friend, Sarah. John tiptoed out of his house, a thrill coursing through him. He felt like a teenager sneaking out, the guilt a mere whisper compared to the anticipation thrumming in his veins. The crisp morning air felt charged with excitement. His phone vibrated in his pocket. It was Sarah.
Come on, I'm waiting.
The text read. John chuckled, a man on a mission. Sarah's house was a short drive away, a charming little cottage with a blooming flower box. It held the promise of forbidden fruit, and John was eager to take a bite. Sarah, a vision in a silk robe, greeted him with a playful slap on his arm.
You're later than I expected.
She purred, ushering him inside. Her perfume, a heady mix of jasmine and vanilla, filled his senses. The house was quiet, the air thick with anticipation. John shut the door behind him, a wave of desire washing over him. They moved together like dancers, their bodies familiar, their passion a raging fire. Time seemed to melt away as they lost themselves in each other's arms. A sudden noise from upstairs shattered the silence. They froze, their eyes wide with panic. The sound was unmistakable, footsteps heavy and deliberate.
Oh my God, it's Mark.
Sarah whispered, her face ashen. Mark, Sarah's husband, was a soldier stationed overseas. He wasn't supposed to be back for another month. John's blood ran cold.
Quick, under the bed!
Sarah hissed, shoving him towards the bedroom. He scrambled underneath the bed just as the bedroom door creaked open. The bed dipped as Sarah sat down, her voice trembling as she answered the phone. John lay there, his heart pounding against his ribs. He could hear muffled sounds from above, Sarah's forced laughter sending shivers down his spine. John peeked from under the bed and saw Sarah's legs, her usually playful demeanor replaced with a mask of terror. The floorboards creaked again, closer this time. John held his breath, praying to a god he didn't believe in.
Honey, I'm home early.
A deep voice boomed. It was Mark. John squeezed his eyes shut, his body rigid with fear.
I wanted to surprise you, but it seems someone beat me to it.
Mark chuckled, his voice laced with suspicion. John's mind raced.
What do you mean? It's just me here, darling.
John could hear the rustling of clothes, the clatter of something falling to the floor.
I'm just surprised is all.
Mark said, his voice closer now. John felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. The phone on the bedside table rang shrill and insistent. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp.
Don't answer that.
Mark growled, his voice low and dangerous. The phone continued to ring, each ring amplifying the tensions in the room. John's hand instinctively reached for his pocket. It was his phone, buzzing with the same insistent rhythm. He had forgotten to put it on silent.
Who is calling you that you can't answer?
Mark asked, his voice a menacing whisper, Sarah's voice caught in her throat. The phone stopped ringing, plunging the room into a heavy silence. Suddenly the front door slammed shut. Footsteps echoed through the house, coming closer, closer. The bedroom door flew open, revealing a figure silhouetted in the hallway light.
Mark, darling, what a lovely surprise. I brought flowers.
John's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. It was his wife, Mary. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. John stared, his eyes wide with disbelief as his wife entered the room. Mary, his sweet, unsuspecting Mary, was standing in the doorway of his lover's bedroom. The silence in the room was deafening. Sarah sat frozen on the bed, her eyes darting between Mark, her husband, and Mary, her supposed best friend. Mark stood in the doorway, his face a mask of confusion and growing suspicion. Mary, oblivious to the tension, stepped into the room.
What's wrong?
She asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Her gaze fell on Sarah and her eyes widened.
Sarah, what are you doing here?
And then she saw him. John, his face pale and contorted with a mixture of fear and shame, stared back at her from under the bed. His lie, his betrayal, his entire double life. It all came crashing down in that single, heart-stopping moment. The flowers slipped from Mary's grasp, falling to the floor with a soft thud. The only sound in the room was the frantic thumping of John's heart, a terrified drumbeat in the silence.